1. The false friend facade, You've been going through a rough patch. Work's been a little overwhelming. Your health's felt off, and some old friends seem distant. Then, someone new steps into your life. Friendly, caring, listening to you more than anyone you've ever known. They remember your birthday. They call you special. They show up just when you need them. You feel grateful because, finally, someone truly gets you. And then, you open up. You start sharing things you've never told anyone, your past, your fears, those unfinished dreams. You begin to think, maybe this time I've found a real friend. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how can someone get that close, that fast? Let me share something with you. Sometimes, kindness isn't kindness. It's strategy. Some people don't come into your life to connect. They come to collect. They ask deep questions not to understand, but to gather intel. They nod, empathize, share so-called personal stories, but those are just the keys to get you to lower your guard. They're not looking for friendship. They're building a target file. I once knew a woman named Linda. She worked in media. She met a new colleague, Alice. Alice was friendly, easy to talk to, always made Linda feel heard. They'd have lunch together, texts outside office hours, converse like best friends, even though they'd only known each other a few weeks. Linda started sharing about her family, her insecurities at work, even some personal mistakes. Then one day, Linda discovered that those conversations had been repeated, but not in the way she told them. They were distorted, full of vulnerabilities, mistakes, and outright judgment. When Linda confronted Alice, she just smiled softly and said, "I was only concerned." What's wrong with that? As Seneca once said, don't give anyone the keys to your soul, just because they smile and say kind words. A Stoic understands that friendship doesn't come from fleeting feelings. It comes from time, challenges, and endurance. A true friend wouldn't rush into your life like they've been there forever. They wouldn't exploit you in a moment of weakness. They wouldn't use your trust as a building block for their own power. Behavioral psychologists call this accelerated intimacy. It's when someone rushes the relationship forward to bypass your defense systems. They mirror you on naturally same music taste, same movies, same habits, making you think we're so alike. But really, they're reflecting you to win your trust. Ask yourself, have you ever met someone like that? Someone who made you open up, only for you to realize you'd shared too much, far too soon. Someone who knows all your pains, but disappears when you needed them the most. I'm not saying you need to close yourself off to everyone, nor am I advocating blanket suspicion, but I do believe trust needs to be built slowly. It shouldn't be freely given just because someone is charming. Notice how someone behaves when you have nothing valuable to share. Are they still around, or do they vanish? Ask, do they keep others' secrets? Because if they can't, sooner or later, they won't keep yours either. And the most important thing to remember, you have the right to guard a part of yourself. You don't need to reveal everything to be loved. You don't need to air it all out to be trusted. When someone comes into your life too quickly, asks too many questions, and laughs too much, pause, take a breath. Real friendship is like planting a tree. It takes time, quiet, nurturing, deep roots before it grows tall. But if someone comes in like a whirlwind, sweeping your emotions into their wind, and disappears once they've collected what they need, know this, that isn't connection. That's camouflage. If you've ever met a friend like that, leave a comment. I'm learning to trust slowly. 2. The debt builder. The kindness that comes with a hook. There's someone in your life, a colleague, a distant relative, maybe even a fairly new friend who always seems to show up at just the right moment. You're tired. They hand you a cup of coffee. Feeling under the weather. They've got the meds. You casually mention needing a hand, and there they are ready to help. No questions asked. You're touched. You think, wow, it's so good to have someone who actually cares. But then, One day, they message you something like, "After everything I've done for you, I just need a little favor." And that little favor, well, it's anything but little. I want to share something I've learned through many conversations with people who've been hurt by these so-called helpers. Not everyone who helps you does it out of love. Some people help to collect. Some build favors the way others build. Debts to demand, to bargain, to create dependency. And you don't even realize it until you start feeling guilty for not giving back. Not because you're ungrateful, no, but because they've made you believe you owe them something massive. Remember a real story, my friend Mark. He went through a tough time after losing his job. There was this co-worker, Jeff, who seemed like an angel. Gave Mark rides to interviews, bought him lunch, even gifted him a suit. Mark was truly grateful. When he landed a new job, the first thing he did was take Jeff out to dinner to thank him. But Jeff didn't stop there. He started asking for referrals. Then came small favors, which grew into big expectations. When Mark said no because it would have gone against company policy, Jeff snapped. "I was there for you when no one else was. You can't do this one small thing for me." What once felt like kindness turned into control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not let your gratitude become a chain around your neck." Sincere gratitude is beautiful, but if someone uses their generosity like an investment waiting for the day to cash it in with pressure and guilt, that's not kindness. That's a transaction in disguise. Stoicism doesn't tell us to be ungrateful. It reminds us to examine intent, and it tells us this: you are never obligated to compromise your values to repay a debt you never agreed to owe. In psychology, this is known as covert emotional contracting. A person gives with an unspoken expectation in return, but they never say it up front. And when you fail to meet their unwritten rules, you're not just disappointing them, you're being manipulated by guilt. Have you ever been in that situation? Someone helps you, but then uses that help to control you. Have you ever done something you didn't want to just because you felt bad saying no to someone who once did you a favor? I'm not saying to question every act of kindness, but I am inviting you to observe the motive. If someone helps you and disappears, expecting nothing back, that's genuine kindness. But if they remind you constantly of what they've done, like a ticket to demand, control, or even punish, that's power in the mask of compassion. Be kind, but also know your boundaries. You have the right to say no. You have the right to say, "I appreciate what you did, but I can't do this." And if they turn away because of that, then you've learned something very important. They never helped you out of care. They helped out of calculation. In this world, some debts aren't about money. They're about manipulated gratitude. But that debt only exists if you accept it. You owe nothing to someone whose help came with invisible strings attached. True gifts come with no conditions. Remember, the truly kind don't keep score. The truly generous don't expect repayment. And if you've ever fallen into a kindness trap, drop a comment below. I'm learning to be grateful without being bound. 3. Escalating aggression. When the joke isn't just a joke. I want you to think back to a moment. Someone once joked, "If I ever snapped, who knows what I'd do?" And then they laughed. You laughed too, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Or maybe someone bumped into you hard while walking by. You turned around, and they said, "Oh, just an accident." And you told yourself, "Maybe I'm being too sensitive." Have you ever felt like that? Let me tell you something I've learned. The most dangerous people don't start with fists. They don't slam tables or throw threats the first time you meet them. They start small, and then they push a little more, and a little more. Like they're testing how far they can go. This is what I call behavior escalation, and it's one of the most manipulative psychological tactics out there. I remember a real story about a woman named Leah. She had just moved into a new apartment and met her neighbor, Adam. He seemed a little odd, but not threatening. At first, it was just friendly hellos, offering to help carry things. Then, slowly, He started showing up every time she left her apartment. One day, at a small building cookout, Adam joked, "If I were a killer, no one would ever know." Everyone laughed. Leah did too. But it wasn't a real laugh. Weeks later, he started standing in front of her door, saying strange things. And then one day, she found a knife on her welcome mat. No note, no clear threat, but impossible to ignore. Luckily, Leah didn't brush it off as just a prank. She changed her locks, installed a camera, and called the police. That camera later caught Adam trying to pick her lock at 2 a.m., wearing gloves and carrying a black duffel bag. Sound extreme? Maybe. But as Seneca once said, a wise person doesn't live in fear but always prepares for the worst. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be paranoid. It teaches us to observe clearly, to notice the signs others dismiss, and to never trade intuition for politeness. Psychologists call this boundary testing. Manipulators cross a line just a little and watch how you react. If you stay quiet, they push again. Each time, your normal shifts, until one day, you're tolerating things you once swore you'd never accept: an uninvited touch, a joke with violent undertones, a little too much closeness. It's all part of a larger script. Have you ever been trained to accept something that once felt wrong? Have you ever let something slide, just because you didn't want to make a scene? Have you ever laughed along, only to lie awake later, wondering why it unsettled you so much? I'm here to tell you, you're not too sensitive. That tight feeling in your gut, the chills down your spine, that uneasy silence, it's not overthinking. That's your ancient warning system. And it exists to protect you. Trust it. And if someone repeatedly crosses your physical, emotional, or verbal boundary, stop, watch, take note. You don't have to confront them, but don't ignore it. Being polite is not the price you pay to be disrespected. You have the right to say, "That comment made me uncomfortable." You have the right to step back, lock your door, and alert someone simply because you don't feel safe. You don't need hard proof to trust your instincts, because people who escalate behavior are counting on you not to. That's when they move forward. If you've ever experienced anything like this, leave a comment. I'm learning to trust my feelings. And if this video was the reminder you needed, subscribe. We don't live to be afraid. We live to be aware, to protect ourselves, and to stay awake to every subtle sign. Don't be kind, but be sharper than ever. 4. The mirror manipulator. When empathy is just a costume, you meet someone new, and within the first few minutes of conversation, you're surprised how weirdly similar they are to you. Same taste in music, read the same book, same thoughts about love, work, life. It's like you're talking to a version of yourself. You think, "Wow, it's amazing to find someone who understands me this much." And you start to trust them. You open up. You share more, faster, deeper. But then one day, they disappear. Or worse, they use what you told them to hurt you. Let me tell you this. One of the most dangerous forms of manipulation is fake empathy. Manipulators don't always show up as bullies, control freaks, or loud voices. Sometimes, they show up as a mirror. They reflect you precisely, almost perfectly. So you see yourself in them. So you believe, "We're so alike, I can trust them right away." But the truth is, they're not like you. They're just pretending so they can extract trust, collect your secrets, and eventually, control you. I once knew a woman named Rachel. She met a guy online. From the very first messages, it felt different. They both loved photography. They both hated math in school. They both enjoyed morning walks. He even shared a story about a broken family so close to hers, it gave her chills. They bonded fast. Rachel opened up about her childhood, her deepest pain, stuff she'd never told anyone. She believed, "Finally, someone gets me." But just a few months in, things changed. When she said no to a small favor that crossed a boundary, he got cold, distant. Then came the guilt tripping, and Suddenly, those things Rachel shared, they turned into emotional weapons used to shame her, pressure her, manipulate her. Epictetus once said, "Before you trust someone, observe how they act when they need nothing from you." Stoics aren't cold, they're clear. They know real empathy doesn't come fast, and it never wears a mask. Someone who truly relates to you doesn't have to highlight it all the time. They let the connection unfold slowly, without pushing, without probing, without perfect coincidences. In psychology, this tactic is called mirroring, a technique used by social manipulators to build trust quickly. It works because our brains are wired to trust the familiar. When someone seems like us, we let our guard down. But if you really pay attention, you'll notice something. They have no depth of their own. They don't reveal anything real about themselves. They just repeat you. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone you just met, but you found yourself telling them things even your family doesn't know. Someone who made you feel so understood, but then you realize they've shared nothing real about themselves. I'm not saying you should close yourself off to people, but I do believe that trust should grow with time, not just through early emotional fireworks. If someone feels too familiar, too fast, pause, take a step back. Ask yourself, is this person really here with me, or just reflecting me to get inside? Hold on to parts of yourself not because you're cold, but because you get to choose who's worthy of seeing the deepest parts of you. Friendship, love, connection. All of these need time to prove themselves. If someone rushes to know everything about you, ask yourself, are they trying to understand me, or preparing to manipulate me? A true friend doesn't rush. They don't need to be just like you. They just need to accept you. And if you've ever met a mirror instead of a person, drop a comment. I'm learning to trust time, not just connection. 5. The silent observer. When someone's watching, and you don't even know it, or sipping your morning coffee, sitting by the window, watching the same street you see every day. A familiar face, maybe an old friend, or someone you barely ever spoke to appears nearby. They don't say anything. They just sit, at the perfect distance, to feel friendly. They smile softly, innocently, and you think, maybe they're just here for coffee. But what you don't know is that they've been watching you for a while. This is what I call the silent observer. They don't shout, they don't make a scene, but they know your routine down to the tiniest detail. They show up at the right time, not because it's random. They know your favorite coffee spot, which corner you sit at, how you decorate your desk, but you don't notice, because you never expected someone to know so much without ever showing it. I had a friend, Christine. She used to joke, every time I hit the gym at 6 a.m., my ex somehow shows up there too. She thought it was just coincidence. One day, she changed her schedule, he changed his too. She thought, maybe he misses me. But then it got strange. He'd leave little gifts, send good luck texts before her workouts, then show up, again, at the coffee shop, the grocery store. On the way home, it stopped feeling like coincidence. It started feeling like surveillance. The Stoics had a saying, mystery does not belong to you, it lives in others. They valued privacy, clear boundaries, both yours and theirs. The silent observer breaks that. They don't need threats. They don't need confrontation. They just exist in your personal space. In silence. Psychologists call this covert stalking, a form of tracking behavior where someone collects data about your habits, routines, and social circles, building a complete picture of you. Long before you even realize they're looking, they don't move quickly. They map you before they ever make a move. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, heart racing, for no reason, except this sudden thought, am I really safe? Ever waited for the elevator and noticed someone staring too long before they quickly turned away? Ever stood near someone who wasn't doing anything wrong, but something about their presence made your body tense up? If you've experienced that, don't ignore it. That's not paranoia. That's your ancient internal alarm system. and it's whispering, something's not right. Set boundaries. Change your schedule if you have to. Create space. Tell someone you trust. You don't have to raise the alarm for the whole world. You just need one person who knows so. You're not alone if something happens. You don't need to live in fear. But don't live in denial either. Silent observers don't show up to make you feel safe. They show up to stay hidden. You can still be polite, but you also have the right to speak the truth. If you've ever felt like you were being watched, leave a comment below. I choose to protect myself by trusting my instincts. Because being aware isn't being paranoid, it's being alive. 6. The patient predator, when the quietest one, is the most dangerous there. Someone in your life, maybe a coworker, a neighbor, or a new friend, who's not in a rush. They don't sweet talk you. They don't get upset when you say no. They're just patient. They show up at the right time. They offer help. They remember the little things. But they never come on too strong. They move like a quiet stream, steady, soft, and unnoticed. And before you even realize it, they're already close. This is what I call the patient predators. Someone who doesn't strike fast, doesn't push, but prepares. They don't need to stand out. They don't provoke. Because they know you only resist when you feel unsafe. And when they move slowly, you don't feel it coming. I had a friend named Emily. She moved back to live near her parents and met her neighbor Mark. Mark was nice. He offered to fix her flat tire. He remembered her pet's name. He invited her to a family BBQ. Months passed. Mark knew her work schedule, her running habits, her best friend's name, even her favorite foods. Emily didn't think much of it, because Mark felt safe. He never said anything weird. He was just there, always. At the right moment. Then, she lost her job, felt stuck, hopeless. And guess who showed up? Mark. Gentle, thoughtful, supportive, and suddenly, the connection deepened. But soon, those acts of kindness came with unspoken strings. Requests that felt small at first. But when Emily said no, Mark went silent. That's when she realized she wasn't being cared for. She was being controlled. Epictetus once said, "Prepare for what you can see, but be watchful for what you can't." Patient predators don't push you into a trap. They wait for you to walk into it. By the time you question their presence, they've already planted themselves in your mind. The Stoics were never cold, but they were clear. They didn't reject kindness, but they guarded their peace. Psychologists call this delayed manipulation. They don't act quickly. They let time earn your trust, then twist it into dependency. And when you're down, they're there. A savior, a helper, a steady shoulder. But if you don't reciprocate, they pull back, disappear, and suddenly you feel guilty. You need them. And just like that, they own a piece of you, not with words, but with presence. Have you ever had someone who always showed up when you needed help, but somehow made it really hard to say no to them later? Have you ever missed someone not because you truly valued the connection, but because their absence made you feel lost, like you owed them something? Have you ever entered a relationship because you needed help, and then found yourself trapped? I'm not telling you to shut your heart. I'm telling you to keep your mind clear. Before you let someone into your inner world, ask yourself, are they truly waiting or pushing subtly? Do they help without expectation? When I don't need them, do they still show up? Or do they vanish or grow cold? If you see signs of calculated patience, gently step back. Keep it neighborly, professional, whatever feels safe. But don't let them deeper, just because they waited longer. You don't have to live in fear, but you do have to live awake. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't a loud voice, it's the quiet presence that waits. And once you realize someone's just there, even when you didn't ask them to be, you might start seeing the strings behind the smile. If this resonates with you, leave a comment. I'm choosing presence in my own terms. 7. The perpetual victim. When sympathy becomes a trap, Have you ever known someone who, in every story they tell, they're always the one who got hurt? Everyone else is wrong. Life is unfair. And somehow, they're always the victim. At first, you feel for them. You want to help. You think, maybe I can be the person who shows them that good people still exist. But the longer you stay close, the more drained you feel. And every time you don't do exactly what they expect, you become the betrayer in the version of the story they tell others. I once knew someone like that. Let's call her Amy. Amy always had a sad story. Her ex cheated. Her friends used her. Her co-workers were out to get her. And at first, I truly believed she was just unlucky. I listened. I showed up. I supported her every time she needed me. Until one day, I said no to a small favor, simply because I was tired. A few weeks later, I heard from someone else that Amy had been saying I was cold, fake, and abandoned her when she needed me most. That's when I realized I wasn't a friend. I was just another character in her drama where she had to be the victim. In psychology, this is called perpetual victimhood, a mindset where someone doesn't actually want a solution. They want attention. They want sympathy. And most of all, they want control. They make you feel guilty. They make you feel like you're constantly proving you're a good person. And that's how they manipulate emotionally. The Stoics taught, we don't control what others do to us, but we always control how we respond. The person who plays the victim, they always blame the outside world. They avoid personal responsibility. They resist growth. Why? Because if they stop being the victim, they'd have to change. And that's way harder than blaming others. Have you ever been the rescuer in someone's life? So much so that you forgot who you were? Have you ever been around someone who made you apologize constantly, even when you didn't do anything wrong? Have you ever feared that if you said no, you'd be labeled selfish or uncaring? If you said yes to any of these, you might be dealing with someone stuck in the victim role. This isn't just emotionally exhausting, it's manipulation. And when you stop complying, they shift the story from I need help to you betrayed me. Worse, they might retell the truth with just enough twist to make you the villain in someone else's eyes. All with a convincingly sad expression. I'm not saying you have to be cold, but you do have the right to protect your energy for those who truly value it. Ask yourself, do they ever reflect on their own part in the story? Do they keep repeating the same pattern, just changing the names of who hurt them? Do you feel like you have to walk on eggshells just to avoid being seen as the bad guy? If the answer is yes, you don't have to lie. Just step back. Boundaries are not rejection. They are loyalty to yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, when someone gets upset that you didn't help them the way they wanted, remember you weren't born to fulfill their expectations. You were born to live with honesty, not to play a supporting role in someone else's victim narrative. If you're in a relationship like this, you're not alone. You're not cruel for saying, I can't help anymore. You're simply returning to yourself. Because you cannot heal someone if they're committed to staying wounded. If this speaks to your experience, leave a comment. I choose compassion. With boundaries. 8. The saboteur strategy. When destruction wears a smile, there's a certain type of person. They don't shout at you, they don't criticize you openly, and they never come at you directly. Instead, they whisper, not to you but to those around you. I want you to imagine this. You show up at work, and something feels off. People act distant. Your closest friend seems cold. Opportunities begin to vanish, and you have no idea why. No one scolds you. Number 1 calls you out, but you feel you are being judged in silence. Have you ever felt that way? I once knew someone. It happened to a friend of mine, Josh. Josh was open, kind, and genuinely well liked. Until one new colleague, let's call her Sarah, came into the picture. Sarah wasn't openly jealous. She didn't pick fights. She just expressed concern. Josh seems a little distracted lately. I heard he's been showing up late sometimes. Each comment, vague, unverified. but said with such sincere concern. People began to believe her. A few months later, Josh was seen as unreliable. He missed out on a promotion. And even when the truth started coming out, his reputation had already taken a hit. He couldn't fully recover from Dot and Sarah, still seen as the sweet, thoughtful one. Psychological research confirms this. Even when people know a claim is unproven, just hearing it is enough to shift perception. Repeat it enough, and people start doubting their own judgment. The silent saboteur knows this well. They don't attack. They plant seeds. One tiny seed of doubt, another of worry, until your image starts to crack just a little. Seneca once said, "We are not hurt by words, but by how long we let them live in our minds." And saboteurs don't aim directly at you. They aim at how others see you. Because if enough people start doubting you, you'll feel isolated. And when you're alone, you're more vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you react. And that's what they're waiting for. Your fall. One they never had to push. Are you going through something like this? Have you ever found yourself explaining things you never said? Ever feel exhausted trying to maintain your image among people who once knew you? If yes, pause for a second. You might be walking right into a silent sabotage. So what do you do when you suspect someone's quietly undermining you? Don't panic. Don't rush to explain yourself to everyone. Because reacting too strongly, it can make you look guilty. Instead, keep receipts, messages, emails. Observe closely. Who started pulling away? What might they have heard? From whom? Have calm, direct conversations, not to accuse, but to understand. And most importantly, don't let it destroy your integrity. Marcus Aurelius said, "True character isn't defined by others' opinions. It's found in the steadiness of your own mind." You don't need everyone's belief. You just need to live aligned with the truth quietly, consistently. A saboteur can distort how others see you, but they can't make you into something you're not, unless you start acting like it. If you're the target of someone like this, I want you to remember, you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. And you don't have to face this alone. Leave a comment below. I choose to stay grounded. Let it be a silent declaration that you're not falling for the trap of doubt, that no one gets to define your worth behind your back. Because in a world full of whispers, the quiet strength of self-respect speaks loudest. You can't stop people from talking about you, but you can live in a way that makes their words lose their weight.